International Speech Contest 2016. Our sixth speech is by Andrew Miller. I wonder. Andrew Miller. All the best.
Thank you. Yes! Our friends were getting married. My wife and I invited. Just one logistical challenge. Our friends were Sri Lankan. Contest chair, ladies and gentlemen, that's a long way to go just for a wedding. I wonder, what would you do? I can tell you exactly what we did. We seized the opportunity. We flew halfway around the world and then missed the actual wedding. Things had started out so well. The bride's wealthy family had a spare villa where we could stay. And on the day of the wedding, we stood outside basking in the afternoon sun and waited for the taxi. And waited. And waited for 2.5 hours. The Buddhist ceremony, the reason for going, was well and truly over by the time we arrived. The evening do nothing more than a disco and a buffet in a westernized hotel. We could have been anywhere. The journey home, the taxi driver got horrendously lost. We drove around for hours in the dark when all we wanted to do was curl up in bed and go to sleep and put a bad day behind us. So our mood was not enhanced when we were dropped off to discover we were locked out. Oh, we hammered and we clamored and we yelled, but nobody came to our rescue. As we stood there tired and dusty and being eaten alive by mosquitoes, we realized the only chance of sleeping in a bed that night was to phone for help. We had one number, and it was exactly the number you really do not want to be calling. 2 a.m, on the night of a wedding, the bride. Oh, she phoned the caretaker and unlocked the gates and let us in. And finally, my wife and I had a moment alone to reflect on what had been a disaster of a day. I wonder, if this had happened to you, how would you have reacted? I can tell you how my wife reacted. 11 hours of pent-up rage and frustration erupted. It was now my task to make sure that the violence she wanted to do was directed at soft furnishings rather than anything more fragile. Eventually, she collapsed into my arms, exhausted. She looked up at me with red eyes and tear-stained cheeks and whispered, "How come you're so bloody calm?" And it was true. Throughout the day, even though I hadn't been happy about the situation, I had been the epitome of Zen. At the time, I didn't know why. And that night, I lay awake thinking. One set of circumstances, 2 completely different reactions. Why? By morning, I had my answer. I'd just finished reading a great book by a great man, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychoanalyst, a contemporary of Freud, who spent the majority of the Second World War in Dachau and Auschwitz. And like Colm, from the pages of that book, I learnt that no matter what life throws at us, we can choose how we react, positively or negatively. Those prisoners who reacted negatively, who railed against the injustice of the situation and wished that things would be different, they found that their problems piled on top of each other, building pressure. And in those circumstances, things got so bad that eventually They just gave up. Those who survived, well, they accepted the reality of the situation. They used their experiences to create a kind of perspective on life. And from here, they could pick out the positives. It meant even in hell on earth, you could find joy and actually hear laughter. I wonder if you or I had been there, how would we have reacted? That I do not know. Because no matter how much I empathize with their plight, I cannot know what it was truly like to be there. And this was the second learning I took from the book. Our ability to create our perspective is driven by our experience. And this was the key to my conundrum. Because back in Sri Lanka, standing in a dusty track, waiting for a taxi that may never come, well, that took place just 4 months after I lost my father to cancer. My wife, as close as she is to me, as close as she was to my father, hadn't had the same experience. She found it harder to shift her perspective. So when things went wrong, she looked at the problems and reacted accordingly. As for me, well, I was more like a nominee at an Oscar ceremony. Just glad to be here. So this is my message to you. Hard times, personal tragedy, you have faced them, you will face them. This is life. But turn your negatives into a positive. Use your experiences to create your sense of perspective. Because from here, all the bad stuff doesn't seem so bad. But all the good stuff, that's amazing. And in the future, when things go wrong, when you have a really bad day, I wonder, how will you react? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you this. Whether you react positively or negatively, it's your choice.